The people of the curse. When I got to room 105 the following morning, I put my ear to the door. I wanted to know if Alan the dork was ahead of me. When I was sure he wasn't, I went in. Nothing had changed. This means I was knocked down by the smell, which I now knew was gorilla smell. I don't mean I disliked it. I didn't. I wish I had a bottle of it. Put on a dab before going to parties. That would make folks sit up and take an interest in things. Ishmael was where I'd left him. I wondered if there was anywhere else for him to be in this joint. I figured there had to be a room behind the one I could see into. The room behind the glass was too small for anyone to live in, much less a gorilla. I sat down. We looked at each other. I said, "What do you do if Alan comes while I'm here?" He made a face. I guess he thought this was an unnecessary question. All the same, he answered it by asking me what I wanted him to do. "I guess I want you to tell him to come back later." "I see. And is that what I should tell you if you come while Alan's here?" "Yes." "If Alan's here when you arrive, I should tell you to come back later?" "That's right." He shook his head, bemused. "I'll have a talk to him about it. I can tell you to come back later, but I can't tell him to come back later. Not without discussing it first." "I don't want you to do that," I told him. "If Alan comes while I'm here, I'll just leave." "But why? What have you got against him?" "I don't know. I just don't want him to know about me." "What is it you don't want him to know?" "I don't want him to know anything. I don't even want him to know I exist." "I can't guarantee such a thing, Julie. If he walks through the door right now, he obviously will know you exist." "I realize that, but that's just my first choice," I told him. "If I can't get that, then I'll get the next best thing." "And what's the next best thing?" "Whatever I get just by walking out, that's the next best thing." Ishmael lifted his upper lip, exposing a row of golden brown teeth as big as thumbs. It took me a second to recognize this as a smile. He said, "I'm beginning to think you have a character very like my own, Julie." I gaped at him. "If you don't understand what I mean by that right now, you'll understand it someday." He was right. I didn't understand it then. Now, 4 years later, I think I understand it. Maybe. Anyway, when the chit-chat was over, Ishmael settled back into his brushy bed and started in. "You believe that someone in the universe must know how to live in the world without destroying it. This is what your daydream seems to indicate." "Well, I don't exactly believe it. Let's say rather that it makes sense to you. It seems reasonable to you that if there is intelligent life elsewhere in the universe, some people, somewhere, must know how to live sustainably on their world." "That's right." "Why does this seem reasonable, Julie?" "I don't know." The ape frowned. "Before saying I don't know, I'd appreciate it if you'd take a moment to see if perhaps you do know. And even if you find you truly don't know, please take a stab at the answer." "Okay. You want to know why it seems reasonable that people on other planets would know how to live sustainably?" "That's right." I thought about it for a while and told him it was a good question. The whole art consists of asking good questions, Julie. This is information I need to draw from you right at the beginning. It will be the basis of all our later work." "I see," I said, and went back to thinking. After another while, I said, "It's hard to explain." "Simple things are almost always the hardest to explain, Julie. Showing someone how to tie a shoelace is easy. Explaining it is almost impossible." "Yeah," I told him, "that's so. I worked on it some more. Finally, I said, I don't know why this example works, but it does work a little bit. Let's say you have a dozen ice makers put out by a dozen different companies. One or two of these ice makers will turn out to be not worth a damn, but most of them will work pretty well. Why is that? I guess because you wouldn't expect every single one of these companies to be incompetent. Most of them have to be sort of averagely competent to be in the business at all. In other words, if you lived on a world where a lot of people made ice makers, but not a single one of them worked, you'd figure your world was exceptional. If you visited other worlds, you'd expect to find people who knew how to make viable ice makers. In still other words, it seems to you that there's something abnormal about dysfunctionality. What's normal is for things to work. What's not normal is for things to fail. Yeah, that's right. Where do you get this impression, Julie? Where do you get the impression that what's normal is for things to work? Wow, I said. Where did I get that impression? Maybe this is it. Every other thing in the whole universe seems to work. The air works. The clouds work. The trees work. The turtles work. Germs work. Atoms work. Mushrooms work. The birds work. Lions work. The worms work. The sun works. The moon works. The whole universe works. Every single thing in it works. Except for us. Why? What makes us so special? You know what makes you special, Julie. I do? Yes. This will be the first piece of knowledge I tease out into the light from you. When dear Mother Culture... what does dear Mother Culture have to say about this? What makes you different from turtles and clouds and worms and suns and mushrooms? They all work, and you don't. Why don't you work, Julie? What makes you special? We're special because everything else works, and it's because we're special that we don't work. I agree that there is a circularity in what you learn from Mother Culture on this point, but it will be useful if you define that specialness. I squinted at him for a while, then I said, There's nothing wrong with turtles and clouds and worms and suns. That's why they work. There is something wrong with us. That's why we don't work. Good. What is that, Julie? What's wrong with you? I spent some time on it. Finally, I said, Is this what Mayudic teaching is like? Ishmael nodded. I'm impressed. I like it. No one has ever done this with me before. Anyway, what's wrong with us is that we're civilized. I think that's it. But as I went on thinking about it, that answer lost some of its certainty. That's part of it, I told him, that we're civilized. But there's also something about the way we're civilized. We're not civilized enough. And why is that? Wow, I said. The reason we're not civilized enough is that there's something wrong with us. It's like there's a drop of poison in us. And this one drop of poison is all it takes to ruin everything we do. I guess it was sitting there with my mouth open, because finally Ishmael told me to go on. I went on. Here's what I hear, Ishmael. It is okay to call you Ishmael. The gorilla nodded, saying, That is how I am called. Here's what I hear. We've got to evolve to a higher form in order to survive. I'm not exactly sure where I hear this. It's like it's something in the air. I understand. This form we're in right now is just too primitive. We're just too primitive. We have to evolve into some higher, more angelic form in order to work as well as mushrooms and turtles and worms. I laughed and said, Yeah, that's funny, but that's the perception, I think. We don't work as well as mushrooms and turtles and worms because we're too intelligent. And we don't work as well as angels and gods because we're not intelligent enough. We're in an awkward stage. We were all right when we were less than human, and we'll be all right when we're more than human. But we're washouts as we are right now. Humans are just no good. The form itself is no good. I think that's what Mother Culture has to say. So the flaw is intelligence itself. Then, according to Mother... Oh, so the flaw is intelligence itself then, according to Mother Culture. That's right. Intelligence is what makes us special, isn't it? Moths can't screw up the world. Catfish can't screw up the world. It takes intelligence to do that. In that case, what do you make of your daydream quest? As you head into the universe to learn how to live, are you looking for angels? No, that's funny. Ishmael cocked his head on one side and gave me a quizzical look. I'm looking for intelligent races just like us, but they know how to live without destroying their worlds. We're even more special than I thought. Go on. It's like we're specially cursed, the people of this planet. Ishmael nodded. This is how it's generally understood. Among the people of your culture, that humanity is specially cursed, somehow badly made, or fundamentally flawed, or even literally divinely cursed. That's right. This is why, in your daydream, it's necessary to look elsewhere in the universe for the knowledge you seek. You can't find it amongst yourselves, because you're a cursed race. To find the knowledge you need to live sustainably, you need to find a race that isn't cursed. There's no reason to suppose that everyone's cursed. You feel that someone out there must know how to live sustainably. That's right. So you see, Julie, your daydream was very far from being twaddle, and I'm sure that the journey you dreamed of, if it could be taken, would in fact put you in contact with thousands of peoples who live sustainably without difficulty. You are? Why? Because the curse under which you operate is very, very localized, despite what Mother Culture teaches. It doesn't even remotely extend to the whole of humanity. Thousands of people have lived here sustainably, Julie, without difficulty, without effort. Well, naturally, I blinked at that one. You mean like Atlantis? I mean nothing remotely like Atlantis, Julie. Atlantis is a fairy tale. And I have no idea what you're talking about. None. Ishmael nodded slowly. I realize that. Very few of you would know what I'm talking about. I waited for him to drop the other shoe, and when it didn't drop, I said, Aren't you going to tell me who these people are? I'd rather not, Julie. You see, you definitely have this information, and if I were to reach inside you and drag it out, then you'd be impressed. But you'd learn nothing. The midwife is there to help her client bring forth a child, not to bring it forth herself. You're saying I already know who these people are. I haven't the slightest doubt of it, Julie. I shrugged and crossed my eyes. I did all the usual things, and then told him to go ahead.